Viewer and fellow YouTuber Data on Trail suggested I talk about M.Y.T.H, which stands for Multi-Year Thru-Hiking. Should you consider this for tackling an entire long-distance trail? It's not a tough concept. People have been doing it for years. In the early days of the Appalachian Trail, it was thought to be the only way to hike the entire trail. A single-season hike, what we call a thru-hike, was thought to be impossible. Today, I'll do a deep dive on why for many of us, it's still a better way to go. I completed the Appalachian Trail over 20 years, so I've done it. I just didn't know it had a name. It means completing a trail without the constraints of a single extended trip. While M.Y.T.H isn't a common term, it wasn't just made up. It is a term in the hiking community, though not everyone uses it. For a real-world example, I encourage you to visit Data on Trail's YouTube channel to see his M.Y.T.H in action. The term M.Y.T.H captures something specific. It's not just section hiking. It's section hiking with a purpose, to complete an entire trail. For those of us who are goal-oriented, it can be a satisfying way to meet that psychological need. A word about terminology, because it gets a little messy. Thru-hiking technically means hiking through an area, as opposed to out and backs or loops. In some parts of the AT, some campgrounds are reserved for thru-hikers. This means someone hiking through the area and not returning to their starting point, not necessarily someone hiking the whole trail on a single trek. The common use of thru-hiking has come to mean something more specific, completing a trail end-to-end in one continuous hike. There is some wiggle room. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy considers completing the entire trail in a 12-month period as a thru-hike. If a hiker's bride wants him to be at his wedding and he has to take a couple days off to attend, well, that's allowed. On a long trail in Vermont, I heard the term end-to-end quite often, which is more accurate. I wish M.Y.T.H had started out meaning multi-year trail hike or multi-year total hike or even multi-year targeted hike to avoid the spilled ink about thru-hike, which some object to being used in this context. Section hiking is the mechanism, M.Y.T.H is the goal, stringing together those sections to complete a trail. You can section hike without M.Y.T.H-ing. You might just enjoy hiking nearby sections of a trail with no interest in hiking every mile of that trail. I thru-hiked the Monadnock Sunapee Greenway, 48 miles. I thru-hiked the John Muir Trail, about 220 miles. But I M.Y.T.H the Appalachian Trail. My 3 longest sections on the AT were longer than my longest thru-hike elsewhere. Which is the bigger accomplishment? And does it matter? A better question is, did I enjoy these hikes? And the answer is yes. Many thru-hikers were impressed that I was completing the trail over 20 years. They thought it took more dedication than doing it in a single season. Coming back year after year through all of life's changes for 2 decades, that's a different kind of commitment. During a long AT section, I was 300 miles in with 180 miles to go. I remember thinking, okay, 180 miles, that's about 60% of what I've already done. That's doable. If I had been a traditional thru-hiker at that point, I'd be facing 1,900 more miles. That's 6 times what I'd already done. That would have been mentally devastating. Not for everyone, but definitely for me. With M.Y.T.H, you start fresh each time. You get to do it again on the next section, possibly in another year. Multiple victories instead of one grinding war of attrition. This isn't about making things easier, it's about preserving the joy of hiking. When the goal feels achievable, you enjoy rather than endure the experience. Beyond the psychological benefits, there are real physical advantages to the M.Y.T.H approach, especially for older hikers. First is recovery time. Between sections, your body gets to recover. You can address injuries properly instead of trying to hike through them. You'll reduce the risk of permanent damage from pushing too hard. Second is reduced mileage pressure. You're not racing the calendar as much. If you need a low mileage day, you take it. There's little need to maintain mileage that isn't sustainable for you. Third, you can tackle sections when conditions are right and postpone them when they're not. Got a flare-up of an old injury? Wait until it's better. Is the weather too cold? Well, go next month. An injury doesn't end your dream, it pauses it. It's a disappointment and a setback, but it's not failure. Compare that to a traditional thru-hiker who gets injured 300 miles in. For them, that injury means they may be done for the year. It might mean they're done entirely. Their dream of summiting Katahdin or Springer Mountain that year is over. The psychological blow can be as hard as the physical injury. I want to be fair to young thru-hikers. Many of them face real deadlines. They're trying to finish before they start their careers, before visas expire, or before the seasonal weather window closes. For them, not finishing is a kind of failure because there are real consequences. They might not get another chance for years, if ever. What's failure for a myth hiker? Well, giving up completely and not going back. Miss a section this year? Do it next year. Take 15 years instead of 10? Well, you still completed it. There are disadvantages. With a longer trail like the A.T., the P.C.T., or the C.D.T. in the U.S., travel logistics don't scale well. It's one thing to go through the expense of getting to Georgia to start a hike than to get home from Maine. It's quite another to have to repeat that process year after year for sections spread over 2,000 or 3,000 miles. I rode the train between Springfield and Roanoke 4 times in 3 years. Arranging travel year after year gets complicated and expensive. For example, I had intended to hike from Roanoke to Springer Mountain one year, but I slipped on some loose rocks 9 miles north of Damascus, Virginia, and had to get off the trail. I went back the next year and hiked from the southern terminus to Damascus. After I reached Damascus, my plan was to go to Munson, Maine to hike the 100-mile wilderness and summit Mount Katahdin. But I just didn't feel it after the 480 miles I had already done. I was faced with doing it to finally finish as opposed to doing it to enjoy it. The choice was easy. I opted to finish the next year. You can schedule your sections during less crowded times, but there's a downside to that. A lot of hostels are open seasonally, and sometimes shuttle and resupply services are less available when there were fewer hikers around. You need to do extra planning. You can avoid the spring northbound bubble and the crowding at shelters and camps. It's quieter and more relaxed. You hear the birds instead of other hikers. There's a story, it may be apocryphal, about a young woman at the Springer Mountain camp, the first one on the A.T., just a few tenths north of the southern terminus. She was complaining about the section hikers who shouldn't be using that camp when thru hikers needed it. I have 2 reactions to this. First, most of those thru hikers at Springer Mountain are really section hikers, they just don't know it yet. Only about a quarter of AT thru hike attempts result in completion. I've hiked alongside some of the late starters. They'd be calculating, I only have to do 17.3 miles a day to summit Katahdin on October 15th. Every 0 day or setback put them farther behind. That's not a plan, that's wishful thinking. There's no guarantee Mount Katahdin is even open on October 15th. The guarantee is that it won't be on October 16th. But second, as entitled as she may have sounded, she had a point. Tent sites, bear box space, privies, all have limits that become strained at peak season. At Springer Mountain in late March or early April, the southern camps are mobbed. If you're a myth hiker, you have the flexibility to avoid that chaos. You get a quieter time, more space, less competition for resources. You're reducing impact during peak times. It's a win-win. But it can be lonely. From Roanoke to Damascus, I was ahead of the southbound bubble, and the northbound hikers had mostly passed. I was hiking alone most of the way, only meeting another hiker on occasion. You're also away from home for shorter periods if that's important. Being away for 6 weeks was difficult on my family. Imagine if I was gone for 5 or 6 straight months. It's just not in the cards for me. If you've got your heart set on a traditional thru hike, you should go for it. Do the hike that's right for you. Myth hiking isn't just thru hiking but slower. It's fundamentally different in approach and experience. Psychologically, it may be healthier. You get manageable goals, multiple victories, and you avoid that crushing pressure of racing a calendar with 1,900 miles still to go. Physically, it's smarter for older hikers. We can maintain a sustainable pace that doesn't destroy our bodies. It's not a consolation prize, it's a legitimate, impressive achievement. You still walked every mile of that trail. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, subscribe, and comment on this and other topics you'd like me to cover. And if you haven't seen this video, please take a look at it now. Thanks for watching.